one and all to the 12th Annual Oregon Interfaith Earth Summit. We are here to explore the theme of climate safety and health, how we can protect one another at the community level and at the state level. And you'll find that theme reflected in our speakers, in our workshops, in our agenda today. My name is Peter Fargo, and I serve as the Creation Justice Coordinator for Ecumenical Ministries of Oregon, which we lovingly call EMO. As you may know, EMO is a statewide association of faith organizations and interfaith partners, including hundreds of congregations across Oregon, working together to improve the lives of Oregonians through direct service programs, respectful dialogue on critical challenges facing our communities, environmental justice, and public policy advocacy. Today, I'm so happy to share that we have over 400 people of faith and goodwill that are joining us across 18 hub locations, from Baker City all the way to Newport, from Portland all the way down to Medford, and everywhere in between over Zoom. So it is just inspiring to have you here, and so exciting that we can bring this community of goodwill together on such an important topic. I'm contacting you all from Baker City. We have our hub location, and I'm in a separate room that we call the NOAA room, which seems like an appropriate background for a day and an event like this. I want to say the Earth Summit is possible only because of each of you, because you care enough to show up and show your support. And that really means more than you know. At each location, I'd like to ask our hubs at this time, our volunteer hosts and teams, to raise their hands or to stand up so that you can receive a round of applause from the people in the room, because we really could not do the Earth Summit without you pulling together all of the pieces and parts and giving countless hours to this important effort. So round of applause for all of our volunteers. Thank you. Next, thank you to all the EMO staff and the Creation Justice Committee members who are also on the call with us. You've been working behind the scenes to set us up for success, and we're so grateful that you do what you do. Last but not least, thank you to our sponsors, including the Oregon Health Authority, the Presbytery of Eastern Oregon, and every individual who contributed their time, talent, and treasure to make this come together. With that, I'd like to do a quick roll call so that we can have your voices in this big statewide Zoom room. And I'll be calling on each of our hub locations alphabetically, and by your city name first, and then your congregation or your other location where you're meeting. So if you can unmute your mics at your hub locations only, and then we'll ask you to say yay, just so we know you're here and you're ready to explore the theme of climate safety and health with us. And then after you've done that, please mute your mic once again so we can hear from other hub locations. So first, Baker City, First Presbyterian Church, if you're ready to get started, please say yay. Thank you. Beaverton, Brightway Zen.
Yay.
Welcome. Corvallis First Congregational.
Yeah.
Hello. Cottage Grove, First Presbyterian.
Yes, present.
Thank you for being here. Dallas, Church of Our Common Home. Welcome. Thank you. Dallas, bringing the energy. Eugene, Unitarian Universalist. Welcome, Eugene. Not everyone has a two-way audio setup, so feel free to add an emoji or do a digital applause. That works too. Gresham, Trinity Lutheran. Welcome, Gresham. LeGrand Presbyterian Friendship Center. That's amazing, LeGrand. Thank you. Lake Oswego United Methodist.
I think we could beat that.
Welcome, Lake Oswego. And Medford, St. Mark.
Yay!
Hello. Newport Atonement Lutheran. Newport. Pendleton, the Pendleton Library Community Room.
Yeah.
Hello. We have Portland First United Methodist. First UMC, welcome. And Portland Havara Shalom.
We are.
Heyo. Portland St. Luke Lutheran. I think we need a prize for the best theater at the end of this. That's pretty close. Salem Ike Box. Welcome, Salem. We see you. Very nice. And Tiger Muslim Educational Trust.
Assalamu
Peace upon you.
Assalamu alaikum. With that, I think the yays have it. So I have the honor of introducing the chair of our Creation Justice Committee at Ecumenical Ministries of Oregon, Reverend Rashenda Fairhurst, and she'll be providing our opening invocation. Welcome, Rashenda. Thanks for all that you've done to bring us here.
Thank you, Peter. And welcome to the 2025 Earth Summit. I am Rashenda, and I'm attending here in the beautiful Rogue Valley in Southern Oregon, and my tradition is United Methodist. So let's take a moment to welcome that which is greater than ourselves, what we might call the light, or the divine, or the one, or God, Allah, welcoming all into our gathering. In my tradition, God is everywhere, the creator of everything. God is already present here. We must only awaken ourselves to experience the presence of the Divine One. Let our gathering be a faithful one, an honest one, a neighborly one, and a hopeful one. As we gather, let us remember that the beautiful creation, our planet Earth, and all the universe and all the cosmos, that we are part of that. We are created of and within that. And so are the deer and the forests and the deserts and the rivers and everything that is alive and everything that supports life. And inherent in that life is the dignity of all living things, a deep human dignity where we acknowledge the rights of all humans, not just to exist, but to thrive, where we acknowledge also the rights of the forest to thrive and the rivers to thrive, for we are joined together in this beautiful thing called life. Let it be so. Amen.
Amen.
And now it is my great privilege to hand things over to Frank So, who is the Executive Director of Ecumenical Ministries of Oregon, to continue the welcome and introductions.
Pastor Rashenda, thank you so much. A big applause for you and for everybody there. It is so great to be with you today. This is my third Earth Summit. I remember my previous year being in Dallas, Oregon, and how much fun that was. I'm here in the library of Navarro Shalom and in Northwest Portland. It's great to be here with this community as we get started off and kick off our summit. So we are here for many reasons. Many of us are here because we know that we are the stewards of our environment for our kids and for our grandkids. Many of us are here because we believe in what we call creation justice. Basically, that we have an interconnectedness, as Pastor Rashenda mentioned in her opening invocation, to the world around us, to the beings around us, and that we need to restore God's creation. And by that, we know that we are here because we can make a difference. Because we know that if we don't sacrifice for that which we want, what we want will be sacrificed. And I think that's an important thing to remember. If we don't sacrifice now for the things that we want, what we want will be sacrificed. And for many people, that at first is learning how to recycle. For many others, it's learning how to be better about driving so that we're not using up so much fossil fuels. When we know better, we do better. When we know that there's other ways to gain electricity, we do that. We electrify in different ways. We go to solar panels. We are smart. God has given us all this immense ability to do better, and we know we can, and that's why we're here. Now, I want to hold that there are some truths right now that many of us are feeling. When we talk about the health in our environment, I have to be honest with you. I have a bit of anxiety. There is just a sense of sadness in what we've seen recently, especially at the onset of this administration. 3 days ago, many of us saw the rollbacks that the EPA, their new administrator, has put into place. 31 actions that are meant to better our health have been rolled back. That also includes 11 offices at the EPA throughout the United States that's focus were on environmental justice. So we have right now more work to do than we had planned maybe a year or 2 years ago. But I'm here because I'm excited, and I'm here because we are here because we know that we can make something good happen. And it always takes a small group to start that grows and grows and grows. As Peter said, 18 hubs, 400 of us, more. Years ago, we were, and Pastor Rashinda knows this, we were a few hundred, and we've grown and we've grown, and we will continue to grow. So I'm grateful to all of you. I'm grateful to Pastor Rashinda, the Creation Justice Committee, all the volunteers, all of our friends, all of you who I have not met yet, who I will meet, and many of you who are meeting for the first time. I'm also very grateful for the agencies and nonprofits that are surrounding a lot of the churches and a lot of the faith institutions that are trying to do this good work. I want to now turn our attention to 4 leaders that will be talking to us about their points of views, and I'm excited to hear from them. So first, we will hear from former Governor, the Honorable Kate Brown. Then we will hear from Mohammed Khalid, who's a student at the Oregon Islamic Academy and a club member at ECOMET at the Muslim Education Trust. Then we will hear from Miko, who's a student at Oregon State University and part of the plaintiffs in Youth versus the Government. And then we will hear from Kian Singer, who is an enrolled member of the Confederate Tribes of Umatilla Indian Reservation, a student at the University of Oregon, and co-director of the Native American Student Union. So with that, I'll pass it back to Peter. I'll pass it back to all of you. Thank you for being here. Let's keep fighting the good fight. God bless you all.
Thank you so much, Frank. I appreciate you grounding us in the full context that we're bringing to this work. And we look forward to hearing the inspiring words of our leaders as soon as we can load those videos.
Hi there, former Governor Kate Brown here. I am delighted to be with you in spirit today as you tackle one of the most important issues facing not only our country, but the entire world, and that is climate change. Future generations will judge us not on the fact of climate change, but what we've done to tackle it. And you are stepping up. What I know from 30 years, more than 30 years of public service, is that each one of us can make a difference, but all of us working together can truly change the world. Make it happen.
Hello, my name is Mohammed Khalid. I live in Tigard, Oregon, though I was born in Amman, Jordan. I'm half Iraqi, half Palestinian, and a student at Oregon Islamic Academy, and a proud practicing Muslim. I want to share why climate safety and health matter deeply to me and my generation. I remember a visit to Amman, where I was visiting my family. I noticed that everywhere I went, there were cigarette butts scattered all over the floor, and the smell of smoke was heavy in the air. I noticed it in the bus station, I noticed it in the airport, I noticed it right outside my home. I saw cigarette butts on every single inch of the street, and it broke my heart. The neglect made me realize that how small actions can accumulate to harm the environment, affecting our health and well-being. This was a wake-up call to me, reminding me that caring for our environment is essential for our collective health. This broke my heart especially due to the fact that in Islam, taking care of the planet is considered a sacred duty. It's considered something that's necessary in their religion. There's a beautiful quote from our Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, where he says, "The world is green and beautiful, and Allah has made you its stewards. He sees how you treat it." This reminder inspires me and many other Muslims around the world to act responsibly and to treat our planet with care. And I'd like to spread this message more to the Muslims and the non-Muslims around the world. I want to remind everyone that our planet is for us, regardless of all our backgrounds. For me, climate action isn't something just about policies and large-scale initiatives. I think it starts with the person themselves. I think it means adopting sustainable practices in your daily life, advocating for cleaner communities, and engaging for others to take the small steps alongside with you, so that we can all have a planet to share together to protect our home Earth.
Hi everyone, my name is Miko. I'm from Beaverton, Oregon, but I was born in the Marshall Islands. Right now, I'm finishing my undergraduate at Oregon State University in Corvallis. That's where I'm making this video. And I identify as Jewish, though I currently don't go to synagogue right now. I think a lot about the future, not just mine, but for generations after me. Climate action isn't just about the environment, it's about justice, survival, and making sure people, especially those from places like mine, aren't left behind. I don't want to see more people becoming climate refugees, losing their homes to rising seas and stronger disasters. That's not an abstract idea for me, that's real. One of the core values that drives me is tikkun olam, which in Judaism means repairing the world, and climate action is absolutely tikkun olam. It's about taking responsibility, making things right, and not just hoping someone else will step in. Climate action actually takes many forms. It's protesting in streets, it's pushing for stronger climate policies, it's taking governments to court to make them do what they should have been doing all along. It's education, it's art, it's using every tool we have. I've been in this movement since I was a kid, and my focus has always been on young people and future generations. I'm part of this really cool lawsuit called Youth v Gov, and I'd love to get into more about it, but I only have 2 minutes, so I'll just say look up Youth v Gov or Our Children's Stress Online, or you can watch our documentary on Netflix. But the basic rundown is we are suing the government for allowing and promoting the use of fossil fuels, and by doing so, they are violating our constitutional rights to a livable planet. And we've already seen wins in Montana and Hawaii, which proves that the courts can make these changes. This isn't about policy, it's about basic human rights. It's about making sure governments do their job to protect people and not just corporations. Thank you.
Nixqui, good day. My name is Kian Singer. I'm enrolled with the Confederate Tribes of the Umatilla Indian Reservation. I am also a junior at the University of Oregon. I am pursuing a Bachelor's of Science in Environmental Studies and a minor in Native American Indigenous Studies and Legal Studies. I'm from Pendleton, Oregon, but I really just live on the Confederate Tribes of the Umatilla Indian Reservation, which is like 15 minutes away from Pendleton. And I practice 7 drums, which is the 7 drums in Washut, which is dancing and singing in the Longhouse. So why is climate safety important to me? It's important to protect our future generations on the tribe. We have been sovereign tribal nations living on our homeland, digging for roots, picking berries, living off of the land, stewarding the land. So now that climate change has affected our people and our land, it is so important to me to just try and advocate for change to protect the plants and animals and the land that we have still with us. And our future generations should have the right to go out digging for roots and picking berries or going hunting and fishing. This is a part of our spiritual and mental and just our overall health, our well-being, to be able to just practice our cultural traditions that has been passed down generations. And it's just important to my family, it's important to my community, just my people in general. It's something we have always had on our minds. And climate action for me is going to school and learning about environmental studies and doing a lot of organizing on my campus. I'm also a Save Our Wild Salmon Coalition Next Gen intern, so I also get to organize events through them. Overall, I think that as students, we have the opportunity to make change and have our professors listen to us, and adults look at us, and younger generations also look up to us. So it's very important that we as students can make a change. And yeah, Katsiaya, thank you.
Thank you so much to all of our student leaders and to the former governor, Honorable Kate Brown. We really appreciate these words of encouragement and inspiration. This is for you, the young people, that we do this work. So we're grateful to begin with your voices. At this time, I have the privilege of introducing the lead authors of the 7th Oregon Climate Assessment. And they're going to share the key findings of the assessment that are relevant to our theme today, impacts of climate change across the state now and into the future, as well as some changes that we can expect regionally, since we have so many regions of the state represented on our Zoom presentation today. So our first keynote speakers will be Dr. Erica Fleischman and Dr. Larry O'Neill. Dr. Erica Fleischman is director of the Oregon Climate Change Research Institute and a professor in the College of Earth, Ocean, and Atmospheric Sciences at Oregon State University. Erica has more than 30 years of experience conducting research on ecological responses to environmental change in the Western United States, especially the Great Basin and California. She collaborates with diverse governmental entities, industries, nonprofit organizations, and landowners. Her favorite seasons are tomato and berry, which are also favorites of mine, and she has a soft spot for Labrador retrievers and pinyon jays. Welcome, Erica. Dr. Larry O'Neill is the director of the Oregon Climate Service and state climatologist of Oregon. He leads a team which researches how the oceans affect the weather. As his role as the state climatologist, he works on a wide variety of issues which impact Oregonians, including on water, drought, extreme weather, climate change, and the state's weather observing system. Larry lives in Eugene with his partner and dog, both of whom are wonderful running and outdoor companions. Welcome, Larry. Welcome, Erica. And thank you for sharing your presentation today.
Thank you, Peter. Larry, do you want to come on for a second and let people hear your voice?
Good afternoon, everyone.
Thank you. So we decided that it would be most efficient for me to give one presentation that both Larry and I put together. But now that you've heard both of our voices, you can do the thing that you can do on Google Maps or other apps and pretend that anyone's voice is coming at you if you would like to mix it up. So I am going to hopefully share this window. Let's see here. And you can tell me, hopefully it's working. Can people see that all right?
You can see it, yeah.
Great, thank you so much. All right, we are really, really delighted to be with you today. It is so far, it's an incredible group, and you've already given us a lot of hope and a lot of encouragement. I am going to share a minute or two of personal history to give you a sense of why I, and I think both of us are so pleased to be with this group and share the values that you share. So as Peter said, I'm not trained as an atmospheric scientist, I'm trained as an ecologist. And I have had the good fortune to spend a lot of years in some of the most fantastic places in the West. I absolutely love being in the high desert. And I have the opportunity to study incredible organisms. And frankly, one of the things that I've really enjoyed about spending most of the last 30 or so summers in these places is that they're not all that inhabited. It's really nice sometimes to get away from cars, get away from infrastructure, sometimes to just get away from the press of daily life. At the same time, though, I get to work with incredible people. And that has increasingly been one of the things that I have loved the most about working in the places that I do and with the plants and animals that I do. And I care a lot about people. I care a lot about the people I know, and I care a lot about human dignity and a right to quality of life. So a number of years ago, my friend Oliver, who's the gentleman in this photograph with the snazzy red glasses, Oliver was a professor at the city colleges of Chicago. It's an area without a lot of economic advantages. And Oliver talked to me about how many of the students that he taught and their families were affected by gun violence. And he also talked to me about how when he was growing up in a rough part of Chicago, he really hated summer nights because basically people were real jerks on hot summer nights. And that is consistent with what has become increasingly well understood, that that the effects of climate change are they're not equal, and that areas that have traditionally been socially or economically marginalized can be a lot harsher on humans than areas that have traditionally had more advantages. And so that's one of the reasons that I am so delighted to be part of the Oregon Climate Change Research Institute and to be working with Larry and the Oregon Climate Service. Both the Oregon Climate Change Research Institute and the Oregon Climate Service work on the physical climate. We also work on social issues and on the natural world. And so we're bringing together that understanding of the physical climate with its effects on people. OCRI was established by the legislature. It means a lot to me that that all Oregon bills say be it enacted by the people of the state of Oregon. So I think of it most of the time as, yeah, we were established by the legislature, but we're really serving Oregon as a whole. And we, in addition to conducting science, different types of science, we do a lot with the public, including activities such as this, which are some of the most enjoyable things that we do. The Oregon Climate Service keeps track of weather and climate, as Peter said in the introduction for Larry, and also is involved in a lot of activities that are really meaningful to the daily lives of Oregonians. So, for example, Larry chairs or participates in a number of drought advisory committees. When the governor of Oregon makes a drought declaration for a county, there are a lot of financial consequences. For example, those drought declarations lead to an increase in people's ability to sustain their livelihoods. And that, as we'll touch on in a bit, can have a really direct effect on their quality of life and on their physical and their mental health. So I'm going to talk about a couple of types of climate change that are some of the major ones that we're thinking about in Oregon, and some of the things that Oregon has done that are particularly innovative and encouraging in terms of adaptation. While hopefully humanity as a whole works to mitigate sources of greenhouse gas emissions that are changing the climate, climate is changing, will continue changing for quite some time, even if human-caused emissions stop today. And so adaptation will continue to be critical. So first, I'm going to touch on extreme heat. As average temperatures change, so do extreme temperatures. And what you're seeing here is the average number of days over the past 30 or so years that were above 90 degrees in different parts of the state. The heat index is what the temperature feels like to the human body when heat is combined with humidity. Fortunately, in Oregon, it is not very humid. So generally, the heat index is very similar to the air temperature. Sometimes it's even a little bit below the air temperature. But whatever city or area on this map is closest to you, I want you to look at the number for a second. Just hold it in your head for a minute, because that's roughly how many days above 90 you can expect now. And then add it to the number here. This is the additional number of days above 90 that we're expecting by the end of the century, given the current trajectory of greenhouse gas emissions. And so what this effectively means is that by the end of the century, most summer days are likely to be above 90 degrees in much of the state. And so for some people, it's not so bad. For some people and for some animals and for some livelihoods, that's not necessarily great. And it's not necessarily what people have come to think about when they think about Oregon. So the state has done some pretty innovative things as temperatures have increased over time. So following the June 2021 heat wave that broke records across the state and across the region, Oregon's OSHA put some worker protections in place at particular thresholds of the heat index. So for example, at temperatures above 90 degrees Fahrenheit, workers must receive a 10-minute break every couple of hours, and they need to receive a quart of water to drink every hour. That might seem like common sense, but we're one of very few states that has these type of worker protections, and that I think really cares about implementing it regardless of people's citizenship or residency status. Oregon also has been really innovative in other forms of healthcare. So Medicaid, Oregon has been very innovative in its use of Medicaid. It is the only state that has used Medicaid to give people air filters and portable air conditioners if they're both eligible for Medicaid, which in Oregon is the Oregon Health Plan. So I think a lot of people are not aware that that means Medicaid. And they have pre-existing conditions that place them at high risk of adverse health outcomes from either heat or smoke. And so this has been fairly recent. It's too early to know what the effects are, but it's really encouraging to me that Oregon is being as creative as possible to safeguard people's health as climate continues to change. I'm going to talk a little bit about drought or aridity next. So Kelly Redmond, who was one of the past state climatologists, said, you know, drought is just when you don't have enough water to do what you want. That's the most fundamental definition of drought. There are a lot of definitions of drought, and some of them focus on the physical climate, and some of them focus on effects on agriculture, for example. And drought can be measured over different periods of time, short-term, long-term, decades, what have you. Regardless of what metric or definition you use, drought is becoming more frequent and longer and more severe across the state and across the Western United States. And one of the reasons for that is that even as the state is receiving about the same amount of total precipitation, or is projected to statewide receive about the same total amount of precipitation, we're getting less snow. So more precipitation is coming as rain and less as snow. So again, think about what region you're closest to, or what region you're particularly fond of in Oregon. These are ecological regions, similar vegetation, similar climate. And then think about how this pattern is being manifest in all of those ecoregions. These are two of the most extreme examples where what this line means is that over time, the proportion of precipitation falling as snow is decreasing. And what you can see here, if you look at the numbers, is that the proportion of precipitation falling as snow is decreasing by as much as 50% in much of the state between now and the end of the century. And so that water storage capacity is really affected, even if we're receiving close to the same amount of precipitation. One way to look at this, there are a lot of different drought metrics. This is one metric that combines precipitation and evapotranspiration. So basically, it looks at a lot of different mechanisms by which the air and the soil are becoming drier. And the cooler colors mean that some parts of the state are actually projected to become a little more wet by the end of the century. And a lot of the state is projected to become drier. It's not statistically significant everywhere, but we're heading toward drier conditions in most years, and particularly during summer. That can manifest in a lot of different ways. In communities that are particularly reliant on agriculture, it can create a lot of stress. The economic stress is the sort of feeling that you're not able to provide for your family, not able to provide for other people through food. And these are often nationwide. This is a nationwide program. Communities where traditionally people are reluctant to seek mental health care, and there may not be much mental health services nearby. And so there's this national program that is by and for people in agricultural communities that's trying to provide support, various forms of support, be it economic, be it having someone to talk to try to reduce the stress that climate change and other forms of change are presenting to agricultural communities. In Oregon, many of these programs are led by OSU Extension Service. Again, these programs are new, but they have been, they're culturally sensitive. The indications are that they have been quite successful. And so please make yourselves aware of these programs if you choose, and maybe write down the helpline numbers and distribute them to people in your communities and congregations. The last one that I'll touch on is wildfire. So wildfire, there have been increases in the area and frequency of wildfires across Oregon and the Western United States in recent decades. Those are affected by the increases in heat and aridity. They're also affected by the fact that Oregon's population continues to grow. So here the greens are counties that have grown quite a bit over the past 15 years or so. Not much of the state is decreasing in terms of population, and the state's population grew quite a bit over the last 75 years or so. So more people, and more people in areas where there's a lot of flammable vegetation. So all you need to look at here is the extent of the orange and yellow. If you live in the Bend area, I'm sorry, we're picking on you a little bit. So these are increases in the extent of human settlement in relatively fire-prone vegetation in that area around Bend. And so you can see the differences in the extent of that development over the past 30 years or so. I mean, they're really nice places to live. I can't fault people for wanting to live in these places. And in addition to that increase in human settlement, as many of you are aware, we've had various types of ecological change. So for example, proliferation of non-native, invasive, and highly flammable grasses like cheatgrass and ventonata grass. All of those things lead to an increase in wildfire size and frequency, combined with the fact that that most of the wildfire ignitions across the country are human caused. That doesn't mean arson, although there are some instances of arson. It means that everywhere people go, there are going to be sparks. There are sparks from burning debris legally. There are sparks from, vehicles malfunctioning. There are sparks from a firework that went astray. Wherever there are people, there are sparks. And so across the Western United States, more people have been within wildfire perimeters in the last 20 years. The home and structural losses has increased quite a bit. And like other forms of environmental change, again, these are not equitable. Communities really vary in their ability to prepare for and respond to and recover from wildfire, just like they do from any other natural hazard. Wildfire has disproportionate effects, not only in terms of the flames, but in terms of the smoke. So this is a projection of the increase in what are sometimes called smoke wave days by the end of the century. And the point here is that the number of smoky days and the intensity of smoke on those days is likely to increase quite a bit in the coming decades, putting more people at risk of adverse health consequences. Wildfires also have effects on the people that are displaced, and they also have effects on the receiving communities. And so what has become increasingly apparent is that following a wildfire, people really try to be kind to their neighbors. You open your homes, you try to give people what they need, shelter, food, basic amenities, what have you. But over the longer term, it's really difficult to provide for people that have been displaced. And we see this worldwide. So for example, after the Paradise Fire, Chico absorbed a lot of people who were displaced. And, over the months, it becomes difficult to, find enough places in schools for people's kids, to think about livelihoods, to think about healthcare and other services. So a lot of stresses resulting from wildfire. So there are some things that can be done to reduce the likelihood of structural losses and the loss of life. There are debates about the extent to which removing vegetation in, I guess, what are sometimes called wildlands can be effective. Long story short, not very effective in wind-driven fires. Wind-driven fires, the risks are sparks that are moving pretty far in front of the flame front. And that's what's responsible for a lot of losses of life and structures, is those wind-driven fires. But there are things that can be done either on structural retrofits or on new builds that are not free, but they're not particularly expensive and they're not particularly difficult. So those are things like changing ventilation systems so that it's less likely for sparks to come into structures. removing mulch from around structures. Many of us have mulch right up to the side of our house. I love my daffodils right next to my house, and it's really, really dumb for there to be daffodils in mulch right next to my house. So simple things that can be done that are really effective. And again, Oregon has been a leader in establishing programs that allow different communities to do what's right for them, of saying that there is not one size fits all way to prepare for and recover from wildfires. There's not something that is right for every community, not something that's right for every age group or every ecosystem, but there can be a suite of programs that work together that try to reduce those risks to people and to property and to other values that people care about. So what I will encourage, we're seeing, this is not a surprise to anyone, a real increase in computing capacity, in the ability to use advanced types of modeling to look at climate change and the effects of climate change. That is terrific. I am all in favor of that. Those are tools that Larry and I and our colleagues use frequently, but at the same time, combining that with common sense and firsthand experience. And that's common sense and firsthand experience of the natural world. And it's with the people that we love and we care about. And so I will leave it there. I don't know if we have time for discussion, but thank you so much for allowing us to, or inviting us to come and be with you today.
Thank you, Erica. Thank you, Larry. That was extraordinary. That was relevant. You went from hard science to social science and the resources that can empower us to take action in our regions and in our communities. We really appreciate that. We look forward to getting questions your way. For those who have questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. If you have further questions that can't be addressed in the chat, feel free to email creationjustice@emoregon.org. We can put that email in the chat and maybe we can relay some questions to our speakers in the future. Thanks again. At this time, we're going to continue that conversation about how to strengthen our resilience to climate change in our communities and statewide with Jana Papaefthimiou, who is the State Resilience Officer advising Oregon Governor Tina Kotek on emergency management and disaster resilience. Welcome, Jana. Jana previously worked as a local emergency manager, land use planner, and community organizer. She lives in her hometown, Portland, Oregon, with her husband, their children, her mom, a flock of chickens, and a dog. Welcome once again, Jana. We look forward to your presentation.
Thanks so much. Good afternoon. As Peter said, my name is Jana Papaefthimiou, and I am your Oregon State Resilience Officer. It's really a pleasure and an honor to be invited to speak to you today about the state of Oregon's climate resilience. To illustrate our situation, I would like to start by sharing an experience I had a few years ago. It was a Sunday, June 28th, 2021, and it was 112 degrees in Portland, Oregon. I was the interim director of the Portland Bureau of Emergency Management at that time. And so although it was Sunday, I was working. I was checking in with homeless service providers on their outreach efforts. I was calling around to warehouse stores to try and buy more pallets of water anywhere I could find it. And I was problem solving on staffing for the emergency cooling shelters. But by 8 o'clock, we were still really understaffed at the Oregon Convention Center, with more than 500 people there now seeking refuge from the heat. So when I got off my last call, I got in the car and I drove over to the convention center to work a night shift. And I called my friend Anne, and she agreed to meet me there and take a shift too. When Anne and I walked in the doors, the convention center had been transformed into something resembling a news story about a disaster in a faraway place. There were hundreds and hundreds of cots set out in rows. There was a station with food and cold water and a first aid table where dozens of people were waiting to talk to a medical volunteer. I signed in and I did a briefing with the other volunteers. And people raised their hands for tasks: registration, food station, bathroom monitor. I assigned myself a floater and started walking up and down the aisles in the shelter. I saw a mom with a newborn and a toddler. She pushed two cots together and she was nursing her baby with a blanket over her head. I saw seniors laying on thin cots with their wheelchairs parked next to them. One woman asked me when she would be allowed to go home, and I realized that she wasn't quite sure how she got there. I saw a lot of homeless folks resting and talking. There were people impaired by drugs and alcohol. There was a person talking very loudly to themselves. And there was a man moaning in pain, but he wouldn't talk to anyone else. People kept arriving all through the night shift. We gave them a cot and handed out light blankets, all very distressingly stenciled LA County Jail, because that's what the Red Cross had available for free that day. At midnight, there was an overdose in the bathroom, and we administered naloxone, and someone called 911, but I don't think anyone ever came because medical services were completely overwhelmed that day. Near morning, the person who was moaning asked for an ambulance, and thank God it came that time. They were loaded onto a stretcher and transported while the other guests looked on with concern. As people started to wake up, two men with mobility impairments got into a very noisy argument over the last loaner wheelchair because we didn't have enough wheelchairs and they both needed it to get to the bathroom. That fight definitely distressed the guests around them, and someone just started to howl out loud, and then a child started to cry. When I saw two seniors fighting over a wheelchair, I thought, okay, this is hell. And then someone found another wheelchair we could use. So both guests got one and they could go use the facilities. And then someone, perhaps an actual saint, showed up with the biggest McDonald's order ever and just started out handing Egg McMuffins. I'm not a big fast food person, but Egg McMuffins all around was pretty amazing on that morning. People started waking up and they asked what time the shelter would close because usually shelters close during the day and people have to pack up and leave. But we were able to say that the shelter was going to be open all the time until the weather cooled off. And the guests were happy to hear that. And then the day started and someone got a hold of Human Services and they agreed to put the mom with the two little ones in a hotel for the night. Later, we learned that more than 96 people died of the heat in Oregon during that stretch of hot weather. Almost everyone who passed away was alone. But in the shelter, nobody was alone and nobody passed away. And there was unlimited cold water and ugly blankets and hot food. It was hardly heaven, but it turned out it wasn't hell either. How does this relate to Oregon's climate resilience? I think the honest answer is that shelter is a snapshot of where we are at. Our climate response is homemade. It's put together. It's not perfect. It's not all yet that we may hope, but we're saving lives and we're expanding to meet the need, and we're definitely learning as we go. One important thing about that shelter, we didn't ask people any questions about their gender or their citizenship or any part of their identity other than what should I call you and what do you need right now? Turning people away or frightening them away with threats of enforcement, that would truly be hellish. As a state, we're holding on to our values. When we are called upon to divide people by citizenship or gender or any other way that leaves one group exposed to heat or hunger or disenfranchisement, we will not do that. We will keep showing up for Oregonians when they need us most and center our work in service to those who are most vulnerable. We can call that equity, or we can call it justice, or like the church ladies of my youth, we can just purse our lips and not say anything, but we can't stop doing the work. Communities of faith often set the example in this. As we see today, churches and synagogues and mosques, you've got a ground game. You've got grandmothers, grandfathers, favorite uncles, cat ladies with vegan potlucks, power moms who can fundraise the heck out of a food bank donation drive, and young people with energy and hope. And I need that so hard some days. The state must continue to support and supplement and strengthen these efforts and maintain safety nets for people on the front lines of climate change. Something the state of Oregon has done in partnership with communities is invest in resilience hubs. Resilience hubs are places where people come together daily to share resources and support one another, and where they can find resources during an emergency. This biennium, we allocated $10 million to hubs, including some communities of faith, Joe's Place Ministries in Grants Pass, the Society of St. Vincent de Paul in La Pine, and the United Methodist Church in Ashland. Another way Oregon shows up is looking out for workers. As Erica said, in 2021, Oregon passed laws to protect all workers, indoors and out, from extreme heat. I'm proud that Oregon was the first state in the United States to protect all workers with no exceptions, not for farm workers, not for people who work in prisons, not for any group that is often carved out, because no one should get sick from heat at work. Oregon also continues to show up for people who have already experienced climate devastation, for families rebuilding after wildfires. Recovery takes a long time. The 2020 fires, they aren't in the news anymore, but there are plenty of people who are still rebuilding their homes and their lives after those stunning losses. And there are also many people who experienced losses in a year that wasn't record-breaking, even last summer, but it was no less devastating for those who experienced it. In my role, I meet weekly with state agencies on their work to support families in recovery from the 2020 fires. And as a state, we continue to seek ways to mitigate wildfire risk to communities, to respond swiftly when fires occur, and to stay present all the way through in recovery, advocating for federal resources we're entitled to, seeking to engage all existing state programs, one-time dollars, private philanthropy, whatever it takes to meet the unique needs of survivors. Communities of faith are often prominent in these efforts as well. We have to balance investments in response and recovery with investments in climate risk reduction, because people are already experiencing and suffering from climate change, and we can't let this get worse. Oregon was assertive in seeking federal funding to support work we want to do. And in the last year, we received over $450 million in federal climate funds, including our biggest grant, $187 million, to support low-cost solar for families with low and moderate incomes, and multifamily solar, so we can reduce energy costs for low-income owners and low-income tenants. Also supporting community solar projects and workforce development programs for people who see an economic future in a new solar economy. We also got money for electric vehicle rebates and electric vehicle chargers to make electric vehicles more affordable to people across Oregon and usable even for people in rural areas that have to drive farther distances and need those charging stations. Also, $21 million for energy efficient housing and $12 million for building performance to help people save money and keep their homes warm and cool without damaging the environment. We also got money for heat pump incentives, residential weatherization, other ways that people can work at home to make themselves safer from climate change and also contribute to the well-being of our planet. I'm happy to report that not only was Oregon assertive in seeking these funds, but we have been robust in defending them. Oregon will continue to take all legal actions necessary to make sure our administration pays its bills and does not withhold funds that belong to us. Oregonians pay taxes, we keep our commitments, and we expect the federal government to do the same. Finally, our own legislature is in session, and they're taking up many worthy topics, and I'm sure many folks here are following them. Since I have the mic for just 1 minute more, I'd like to mention a piece of legislation that is timely right now, and it's of interest to me given my experience with cooling shelters. Senate Bill 54 would require residential landlords in Oregon to provide cooling in bedrooms to maintain temperatures below 80 degrees so people can sleep at night and their bodies can recover. It would give landlords 10 years to install the improvements. And at the end of that time, more people would be able to be safe at home in the heat. SB 54 has a hearing next week on Wednesday, and I know some folks in this room will be there. So I think that's where we're at. We're moving forward with a mix of programs, seeking to lift up wildfire survivors who have already experienced their own climate disaster, investing in programs to shift to a sustainable economy, and planning for a future that will be warmer even with our most vigorous action. We cannot do all the things, but everyone can do something. And as a state, we are pursuing a strategy that includes many avenues, many sectors. And in that work, we're centering people who face the greatest risks, not turning our back on them. At the beginning, Frank noted the US EPA administrator announced some big changes this week. My boss, Governor Tina Kotek, said this in response. The EPA was created to protect human health and the environment. The actions the EPA took today roll back landmark environmental regulations and will do exactly the opposite. Combating climate change requires collaboration and long-term work, not deregulating polluters, to ensure a healthy planet for future generations. There is no turning back. I guarantee that climate action will continue in Oregon, and we will continue developing innovative solutions to confront the climate crisis and build a brighter future. Thank you for the opportunity to describe some of the work we're doing, and thank you for the ways in which I know people here are supporting it. I'll see some of you volunteering in a shelter, and I'll see others of you down in Salem, because that's the work and we just have to keep showing up. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jonna, for your leadership. Thank you for the governor's leadership on strengthening our community's climate resilience and bringing that home for the role of faith communities. Really appreciate your time and all the work that you do. And we look forward to supporting SB 54 on Wednesday and perhaps even strengthening efforts like this. We've been involved as ecumenical ministries in installing AC for folks that need it in the Portland area, and we would love to expand that work to other communities. So thank you. Now we get to preview some of our workshops that are coming up after a break. So we have 2 workshops that we have provided statewide programming for, and one of those we're calling Building Community Resilience and Preparing to be 2 Weeks Ready. And that is a super local opportunity to be in contact with and in relationship with our neighbors, talking with our neighbors across the street, to the right, to the left, to find out what they know, what they have, what we have together, and how we can protect one another in the case of a disaster or an emergency and the changes that we're seeing year by year. So that workshop will occur in person, not on Zoom, at your location. If that is a workshop that your location is providing, and I know some locations are doing unique, customized workshops for what you're all working on in your particular community, and that's great too. Our second workshop will be introduced by Sarah Losay, colleague and friend in the ELCA Oregon Synod, community organizer and director of disaster and climate resilience, as well as a leading member of the Sacred Organizing House. So Sarah, if you can join us and share what you'll be talking about in the workshop titled Organizing for Statewide Success. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks so much, Peter. So energizing to see so many faces familiar and new here today. In the workshop on organizing for statewide success, we are gonna show up. We're gonna take action. We're gonna do our part, like Jonna was just calling us all to. So we will be learning about and writing powerful testimony together on 2 bills that are moving through our Oregon State Legislature right now as we speak. One around the community resilience hubs that Jonna and others have mentioned, and another on the Make Climate Polluters Pay bill, which will be dropping tomorrow in our Senate. So that'll be part of it. And we will also, in addition to writing testimony and getting it ready to submit in the workshop itself, we will also look at other opportunities to stay connected and engaged in statewide organizing and advocacy for climate resilience beyond today's summit. So encourage you, whether you're in person or on Zoom, to gather with us in just a few minutes here. Excited to connect with you all.
Thank you for facilitating this workshop on Zoom, and Sarah will be tag teaming with our Director of Public Policy and Environmental Advocacy, Britt Conroy of Ecumenical Ministries. So at this time, I get to introduce my friend and colleague on the EMO Creation Justice Committee, Professor Emeritus of Climate and Clean Energy at Portland State University, and a leading voice on several important committees and commissions including the strategy team for the Oregon Coalition for an Environmental Rights Amendment, Jeff Hammerland. Please join us on Zoom. Dr. Hammerland.
Thank you, Peter. Hopefully people can hear me. I am at the Muslim Educational Trust here in Tigard. You don't get to see all the wonderful people I do because they're in front of me, but we have a wonderful group here, and I'm excited. The Muslim Educational Trust has become one of my homes away from home. I feel so welcomed here. So Peter's asked me to talk about 2 events coming up very quickly, so we want to get these on the screen if we can. The first one is coming up next Friday, March 21st, and it's essentially going to be an extension of this Earth Summit that we're doing right now. It's going to be hosted. It's going to be a webinar. She calls it a climate cafe, hosted by Reverend Rashinda Farnhurst, who you met earlier, and she will be our facilitator. The full title of this webinar is The Right to a Healthy Environment, What It Is, Why It Matters, and Why People of Faith Support It. And it will provide a deeper dive into one of the important bills before the state legislature. It's called Senate Joint Resolution, or SJR 28, the right to health and environment. And if the state legislature passes that bill and sends it on to the voters for the 2026 election, and if the voters decide to pass it at that point, it will become a new amendment to the state constitution, providing a guaranteed right for all Oregonians to have a right to clean air, clean water, clean climate, basically a healthy environment. You'd think that we have these rights now, but actually, it turns out we don't. So this would be a fundamental right, like the right to free speech, to the right to practice our own religion of choice. This would be a fundamental right in the state constitution, and it will make it much more likely the state agencies, local agencies, and others will actually follow what they're supposed to do under the law, which they don't necessarily do right now due to budget constraints and other priorities. So this is going to be an important one, March 21st. And I'm hearing somebody else talking. The second one will be Oregon's Coalition for the Environmental Rights Amendment. There you see it on the screen here. This is very important. It's coming up on the 26th that you see there. We've had 3 lobby days on this very important fundamental right to the healthy environment I've been talking about. This is the most important one, and the experts are coming from all over the country to be there. Top experts from Delaware and so on. If Oregon gets this right passed in the state constitution, as I mentioned, it's going to be a game changer, because all the other very important bills that we care about, that we're hoping to get passed, will actually get implemented. It won't just be sitting on the shelves. They will be implemented because there will be a requirement to do so under this amendment. So that's going to be very important. So we have a number of events here, a lobby day, a lunch. We have a rally, a very important rally. To be very honest, the Senate president says he needs to see a lot of people. He needs to see the faith community there and many others there to show him that this is a bill worthy of being sent to the Senate floor for adoption. It's going to be almost certainly going to pass the Rules Committee, but the Senate president decides whether it's going to be submitted for adoption to the actual Senate floor. And he wants to see a large force, frankly, of advocates pushing for that to convince him that this is the right thing to do. So 2 very important events, and we hope that many of you will be able to join us.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you for your leadership on so many levels and in favor of the right to a healthy environment. This is a really exciting moment for that movement, and we encourage everyone to get plugged in next Friday, this coming Friday, the 21st, and then also in the Advocacy Day that follows. So please check out those links in the chat. And Jeff also will be hosting a discussion for folks who are Zooming in today and not at a hub location. We don't want you to feel left out during our free discussion time break that we're about to take. So at this time, we get to take a break. If you can enjoy some more conversations, connect with your neighbor, connect with some of the local resources that may be on offer, and then please reconvene at 2:50 and hopefully no later so that you can participate in your workshop locally or back here on Zoom. And then we're going to come back from the breaks in time for a closing ceremony of sorts, which will be at 3:50 on Zoom as well. We look forward to seeing you there and back here. Enjoy your break. And thank you to all of our speakers and to all of you for your interest and attention. See you soon.
Did you say people are going to stay on here and talk?
Yes, you're welcome to stay here and talk if you're just on Zoom.
Yeah, I just want to say something about that 80 degrees in the bedroom at night. Those portable ACs are only meant to lower temperatures 20 degrees. When it's 115, you can't get it down to 80. What?
Yeah, let's talk about that. And Jonna may have a link to the hearing that's coming up on Wednesday. And if you'd be interested in providing your knowledge during that hearing, I think it'd be a great opportunity, or providing a testimony to offer that perspective. I do want to let everyone know that if you're at a local hub, this would be a good time to mute your system so that you don't hear all of our discussion on Zoom. And then if you could bring it back on so people can hear the Zoom workshop at 2:50, that would be amazing. So we'll take just a couple minutes here on Zoom to let people stand up and stretch and maybe get a breath of fresh air, and then we'll start the discussion here.
Okay, let me know if you want me to say more about that when you start the discussion.
Thanks, Marilyn.
You're welcome.
Well, the person Peter asked to facilitate this, he's calling it really cool name, virtual coffees and cream, virtual cookies and coffee. There we go, cookies and coffee during our break. And I'd be happy to follow up on the question that the last speaker just mentioned, if we want to hear during this break, or we can talk about some other prompts that I have in mind. Anybody who's on?
Well, let's
Bridget, do you have a quick question, and then we can.
I just wanted the numbers of those bills. You can put it in the chat. The numbers of the bills, that the resilience and the polluters pay bill, those two.
Okay.
Yep, we'll grab those for you in just a minute.
Stay with us, and you're going to be hearing about them within a minute or two.
Okay, thank you.
So I turn this, unless Peter gave me. Oh, Peter, are you there? You are. Are we time to make the transition to the workshops?
Thank you, Jeff, for leading our break time discussion. We really appreciate you, and we look forward to hearing the announcement once again about the right to a healthy environment at the end of this session. So with no further ado, we turn it over to Sarah, Director of Climate and Disaster for the ELCA Synod.
Yeah, thank you so much, Peter, and to all of you for being here today. As Peter mentioned, I'm the Director of disaster and climate resilience. Hopefully the resilience part isn't important, not just directing disasters, but directing resilience in response to it for the Oregon Synod, which is a body of ELCA Lutheran churches throughout the state, though we work with community groups and faith communities from many different traditions throughout the state. And I'm also a leader with our Sacred Organizing Coalition, which I'll share about a little bit more later on. But I wanted to start out just by saying a minute about one of the many reasons that I do this work. And one is just frankly out of love, gratitude and love for my ancestors who were German immigrant farmers and Lutheran pastors who made mistakes, who committed harms against the earth and some of our neighbors, as many of our settler ancestors did, but who also cared really deeply for the earth and for their neighbors. And I do it out of love also for my two kiddos. Maybe you can, let's see if I can, there, maybe now you can see those photos of my two kiddos, who, if they heard me saying this right now outside the door, would be cringing and say, "Stop being so cheesy, Mom." But it's true. I do it because of my love for them and for all kids and future generations. And I also do this work for my love of Mother Earth. And including this place, Whitaker Ponds, a pair of freshwater ponds not far from my house here in Northeast Portland, that's become a really sacred place of belonging and also of resilience and healing for me over the years. And I have the pleasure today of being joined by my colleague at EMO, or my friend at EMO, Britt Conroy, who's going to also help co-facilitate this workshop. Britt, will you introduce yourself and say a sentence maybe about why you do this work?
Yeah, good to see you, Sarah. Good to see everyone. Really nice to see a lot of familiar faces and some new ones as well. My name is Britt Conroy, Director of Public Policy and Environmental Advocacy at Ecumenical Ministries of Oregon. When I look at the pictures we have in front of us from Sarah, I think about a similar place at the other end of our state. I come from a family with roots in Klamath County, and the Klamath Lakes have always struck me as a real harsh tension point between the needs of our neighbors and the needs of other creatures that we share this land with. And for me, this work is important because we are driven and compelled, I think, we're called to work through that tension and address challenges and find opportunities that exist. And certainly today in this workshop, we're going to explore together some powerful examples of what we can do together in the political space to make a difference for the people and the places we care about. So really, really happy to be with you.
Yeah, thank you, Britt. And we'd love for you to all introduce yourselves to each other as well. If you're participating in line, you might go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat with your name, the place you're calling from, and a feature or a creature from that watershed where you are or place that you love. And if you are participating in person, I just invite you to turn to someone next to you and similarly to share a feature or creature from your watershed, the watershed that you call home as well. So just take a minute. I'll put mine in the chat. Invite you to do the same. Wonderful. Blackberries straight off the vine, the beavers, the bees. The Trillium, the Sandy River. Please keep on introducing yourselves in the chat if you haven't had a chance to, and scroll through and see these beautiful gifts. Love in action, kind of the love that I talked about before, the love that motivates me to act, is one of several values that Ecumenical Ministries of Oregon, the Sacred Organizing Coalition I'm part of, our Oregon Synod, and many of our faith and wisdom traditions share. I think we also believe in building an Oregon where all belong, where the gifts of creation are stewarded with care for current and future generations of humans and all life. And as we've heard already, where a safe and healthy environment is viewed as a fundamental right, not just a privilege for those who can afford it. And we have an opportunity during this year's state legislative session to pass some truly impactful bills that really embody these values and will advance the health and safety and resilience of our communities in the earth in a way that leaves no one behind, especially those who are hit first and worst often by climate impacts: rural communities, coastal communities, people of color and lower wealth, people with disabilities, immigrants who are not only disproportionately impacted and contributing the least to climate change, but often unfairly blamed for some of these climate disasters. So I want to introduce briefly those two bills that we're going to at least focus on today. Of course, there's so many, as we've heard, but today we're going to focus on two in particular. Let me resume my screen sharing if I can. So the first bill that we are going to take a look at is HB 3170, the Community Resilience Hubs bill. And community resilience hubs are trusted places, physical places that are designed by and for communities to support communities' day-to-day resilience, as well as preparing for and recovering and responding in times of climate emergencies, disasters in our local level. And this particular bill, HB 3170, builds on the initial Community Resilience Hubs grant program that just came onto line this year. And this bill will add $10 million, a renewed funding for a second round of Resilience Hub and Network grants. And those grants can go to a wide variety of things, including staff positions like outreach workers, food storage and distribution, satellite phones, repairing buildings that are used as emergency shelters, etc. The second bill that we'll be taking a look at today is the Make Climate Polluters Pay bill. And this bill, again, fashioned after bills that have passed similarly in Vermont and New York, requires big fossil fuel companies like the Chevrons, the Exxons, to pay their fair share for past damages that are arising from climate change fuel disasters like drought, like wildfires. And right now it's us, right? It's Oregon taxpayers who are footing these bills and paying those costs, even as those companies are making billions in profits. The payments and the fees that would be a part of this program would be in proportion to a company's cumulative greenhouse gas emissions from burning fossil fuels over the past 3 decades or so, the past 30 years. And the funds will finance critical climate change adaptation and resilience projects. And one of the things that I'm really excited about in the rewrite of this bill is that it will have 30% dedicated to wildfire resilience and recovery, and 40% to environmental justice communities like those that I mentioned earlier. So these are the two bills that we'll be taking a look at today. And in just a moment, we're going to take some action together to pass them. But first, I want to just name something that's been a North Star for the Sacred Organizing Coalition that I work with, and perhaps for many of you. For us, engaging in the legislative process isn't just about passing bills. Of course, we want to get these bills passed. But if all we wanted was to pass these bills, we could probably hire a professional lobbyist or two to walk the halls of Salem for us. And that could be effective and probably a lot less work for you and me, frankly. But we want to engage in the legislative process in a way that builds our power for the long haul. Because the truth is that some of these bills we're working on might die before the session is over. And while these bills are meaningful and impactful, I think we can all agree that they alone don't go nearly far enough towards transforming our systems to address the scale of the crises that we face. And to make change of that magnitude, we're going to need to be a lot more powerful. We're going to need to build a much bigger we of people committed to taking action. So we engage in the legislative process in a way that engages new people, builds skills, builds new leaders, increases our capacity, and strengthens our relationships with legislators and with each other and our neighbors so that we can come out of this legislative session more powerful and energized, not more burnt out than when we started. So it's one of the reasons why all of us coming together here today and staying connected beyond this session is so important. So thank you. just very briefly, I want to put into the chat here our rest of the agenda for our workshop today. We'll do a quick grounding. We'll hear some sample testimony on these bills from a couple of really phenomenal community leaders that I have the pleasure of getting to accompany. I'll introduce a very simple but powerful framework from Marshall Gantz, The Story of Self, Us, and Now, for how we can write powerful testimony. And then we'll write testimony. And we'll also have time to hear about some other legislative actions, proposals, and bills, and opportunities to stay engaged beyond that. And I believe we'll also be joined by Senator Golden, who will provide a little bit of feedback on the testimony that we will get to hear. So that's our plan for today, or for the next 45 minutes or so. But I want to invite us first to just take a moment to ground ourselves. So if you will, I invite you to soften your gaze, or maybe close your eyes if that's comfortable for you, and to feel your body in your chair, your feet on the ground, supported by the earth. Take a moment to feel gravity at work in your body, and notice or slow your breath. And now notice what happens in your body when I say the word power. Power. I know for many of us, power has gotten a bad rap. And too often we've seen it misused and horribly abused. But power in and of itself is neutral. It is simply the capacity to make change. So take a breath, another breath with me. And try to bring to mind a time when you felt powerful. Where were you? Who else was there? What was happening? What did it feel like in your body? I want you to take one last deep breath and come back to this space. And let us use the collective power of those of us gathered here to work today and well beyond today towards climate safety and justice. One of the most important sources of power that we can each draw on, especially in legislative organizing, but also in our local communities, are our own personal lived experiences and stories. So I want to invite now two fantastic community leaders that I get the pleasure of working alongside to join us and to share their testimony, their stories of why these bills matter to them. So Jane Keating, can I ask you to join us here first? And if I don't know if one of us could spotlight Jane, if that's possible, that'd be helpful. But as you listen to Jane's story, and I invite you to consider, what do you notice about how Jane has crafted her testimony? What's compelling to you, and what stands out? And you might even jot down some notes as Jane shares. So Jane, will you share with us why the Community Resilience Hub's legislation and bill is important to you?
Thank you, Sarah. Yeah, I would love to. So my testimony, I'll go ahead and start. It's supposed to be under 2 minutes. I think I did it. All right. Thanks for being here. I'm Jane Keating, and I work as Youth and Families Organizer for Levin Community, a social justice center in Northeast Portland. We are in support of House Bill 3170, which provides funding for the Community Resilience Hub's grant program. Last year, a freak wind and ice storm hit our home street hard. Near us, 4 homes were made uninhabitable. Without power, my neighbor of 30 years apparently had fallen in her home in the dark and died. Her heartbreaking death shouldn't have happened. Parts of Portland were marginally affected, but when some are suffering, as a community ecosystem, we are all hurt. At the Community Resilience Hub's Lobby Day in 2023, I met a woman who, due to disability, would have been unable to escape the Alameda fire without having prepared. She called it community prepping, driven by values of mutual aid as opposed to individual preparedness. This reinforced for me the importance of community-based resilience rooted in relationships and trust. At Levin Community, a person can access a meal, free tools, language classes, community garden, and much more. In this resilience work, we are adding disaster preparedness. Our application for this year's Hub grants went unfunded, along with more than 600 others. Recently, a community center near us just closed. With increasing extreme weather events and disasters, we need more of these inclusive hubs, not less. Collaboration is necessary to survive and thrive into a just future. Please join Levin and hundreds of groups and organizations across the state to support and pass HB 3170. It means an even more robust network of community resilience hubs statewide. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jane. Super appreciate that. And now I'd like to invite Cherise Bach from 350 PDX to share about her testimony about the Make Polluters Pay bill. Cherise?
Hi, everyone. Good to be with you all and share about this bill a little bit. I was imagining speaking to Senator Golden, who's, I think, here listening. So hi, Senator, glad you're here. So this testimony is about SB 682. So my name is Cherise Bach, and I live in Newburgh. I'm a Quaker, and my denomination is important to me because it's really tried to live out the values of peace and social justice. And climate change and environmental justice are the justice issue of our time. I grew up here in Oregon and have chosen to raise my kids here because it's the best place on earth, of course. As a kid in Oregon, I loved to go on hikes with my dad and on family camping trips. During the spring and summer, we would go for hikes on the weekends regularly, and my dad loved to show me his favorite trails. These are some of my favorite childhood memories. My kids are having a rather different experience growing up in Oregon, though I love to share with them some of my favorite trails when I can. So many of their summers have been impacted by wildfire smoke and extreme heat. In the summer of 2018, we spent the year down in your part of Oregon, Senator Golden, outside of Ashland, where we were on a level 2 evacuation notice for several months, and we had to wear masks when outside. Of course, then 2020 was the most memorable fire season, and we were back in the Willamette Valley. We could see fires at the top of the closest hill, and the sky was dark for days. Some of our favorite trails and campsites burned to the ground. Though there have always been wildfires and hot days here, these are exacerbated by climate change, which is occurring mainly because of our use of fossil fuels, which release greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. As a Quaker, I care about this due to caring for other creatures I share this planet with, and because climate change impacts people disproportionately. It's usually harder on those who did the least to cause it. Therefore, as I know you support this already, but I want to urge you to vote for SB 682, which is a bill in the legislature this year with the title Make Polluters Pay. This is important for two reasons. First, because we need to make sure the people who caused the problems are the ones who pay to clean them up. So the fossil fuel corporations who've caused the damage need to pay for the effects. Second, we need this fund because we're already seeing the adverse impacts from fossil fuel emissions. It's not workable or fair for our state budget or individuals to have to pay for this. So I encourage you to vote for SB 682 and make sure polluters pay for the damages they're causing and that regular Oregonians have the funds needed to help our communities recover and flourish. Thank you.
Thank you, Cherise. Thank you so much, Jane. This is a real pleasure to introduce Senator Golden, who will respond and give some insight as a legislator from what the stories we just heard. It's very good. I will say first, very good to see you again, Cherise. Really great to be on here with you. Senator Golden represents several communities in Jackson County, sitting just north of the Siskiyou Mountains. He represents Ashland, Medford, Phoenix and Talent, and other communities. He's a champion on climate issues, on a fair and just tax system, on how to make sure that Oregon's investments match our values. And Senator Golden, I'd like to just invite you to offer your thoughts on just what stood out to you when it comes to Sharice and Jane's comments, and let's start there, please.
Well, thanks. First of all, thanks for inviting me, and I can't overstate how great the work of Sarah has been to build a grassroots movement for these bills. And the ones I'm working on, the Resilience Hub bill is a really important one. The ones that are the centerpiece of my session are polluter pays and the Environmental Rights Amendment. A couple others that around wildfire that I won't talk about right now. And I just want to say to an earlier comment that was made that, one way we could do this is assuming, we got rich relatives dying, leaving us a bunch of money, is to hire expensive lobbyists to walk the halls. There's no path where that could pass this bill, or either of these bills. These are paradigm changing bills that are difficult for a lot of my colleagues that are going to see a lot of opposition. And the only path is a massive grassroots movement of Oregonians of all kinds talking to their legislators. I would say especially younger ones when we're talking about the Environmental Rights Amendment. But that we don't, even if we wanted to, I don't think we have the lobbyists. They're always going to have better heeled, better paid, permanent lobbyists, and that's not what's going to move the needle on this. So let me go directly to your question about the two-minute testimonies I just heard. And I'm not used to doing this. I'm used to sitting up there, but not offering feedback on testimony. I want to say a couple of things first about the 2-minute time limit, which is more and more common. And in fact, we have bills, and this is pretty terrible, where we have 1-minute time limits on testimony. And that is a function of way too many bills that a lot of people want to speak to, and the changes made during COVID, where more and more people are speaking remote rather than coming in. It's not the best form of democracy, but it's what we've got. 2 minutes is more common, and rarely do I see a bill that a lot of people care about where a 2-minute limit, sometimes I do 2-minute 30. You do the math once you get into the committee and see how many people signed up. And it flusters a lot of people, and too many people take too long to get to the point. A lot of people want to talk about the background, their experience in Oregon. If we had the time, if we're a moth storytelling hour, it'd be a good approach. But it's kind of heartbreaking to see people who feel really passionately, who after 2 minutes haven't really made the point they came to make. So everybody's got to be encouraged to have the first paragraph be the zinger paragraph and make sure that they get the main point in. Couple thoughts. Both Jean and Sharice talked about their personal experience, which is a plus. We want to know that. And I would say don't use too many of those precious seconds talking about your credentials and your your organizational affiliation. Some people take close to half a minute on that, and by and large, we don't care very much. We want your name, maybe where you come from, just a little about how you fit into the, if you have special expertise, that's probably worth it, but don't spend a lot of time on that. So I liked that both spoke to kind of why they were there in a human way. That's good. And to Jean's comments, they were really based pretty completely on the values that we share, I would say, of compassion and generosity around the Resilience Hub. And that's good. But I would say it's not complete enough because those values aren't widely shared. So for you can almost always find an economic argument or an economic point to make to accompany, you should testify about the values that are most important to you, and that's what Jean did. But if she could reserve, 20 seconds, 30 seconds with some point about, resilience hubs, we're going to continue to have disasters and people suffering from disasters. And resilience hubs are proving to be the most cost-efficient way to deal with those. Steady centers that are always there, that people know where they are. We don't have to go out on search and rescue and, find people individually, whatever, which is a more expensive way to go. Any bill that deals with healthcare and human services usually has a cost-effective preventative element. So then you are appealing to legislators who share your values around compassion, about treating others humanely, and who care more about the budget and how much money government spends. So try to get in some kind of, it's rare that a bill doesn't have some opportunity to talk about the economics of it. To Charisse, I would say I really liked your kind of the personal brightness you put into this. And that can be difficult, especially when you know you are going to run out of time. When I'm limited like that, I generally read instead of speak off the cuff. But if you can, lift your eyes from the script for a little bit and say something, enthusiastic or passionate or human, that's really to the good. The secret is we're up there on the dais and we hear testimony all day long, or certainly hours a day. And it gets kind of dry, and it's drier when people read it. So if you can find time to, think of one thing you can do to kind of break from your script for just a few seconds and kind of introduce the person you are, why you're enthusiastic about being there. And I would even say, try to time, if it's 2 minutes, if you're preparing for 2 minutes, try to make it like a minute 40, because it's much less compelling when you're speed reading through it. Your heart isn't in it. And I would give up a little content to be shorter, so that if you are going to read, and really that is fine, I'm not telling you not to read.
Thank you, Senator.
Do it at a normal pace. So those are the things that occur to me. I thought both testimonies were good, and those are maybe some thoughts I'd have about strengthening them a little bit.
Senator, I want to thank you for being here and for offering your wisdom and for taking on a little bit of a unique role in one of these webinars in fielding those comments and offering your feedback. So really appreciate it. We all are aware of and appreciate your leadership on these issues in the Senate, and you will see many of these folks in lobby days to come. In weeks to come. So thank you so much for your time, and I'll pass it back.
The last thing I'd like to say is I want to see many, 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 many of these folks, because these are paradigm shifting bills that have real uphill climbs. And I'm talking about the polluter pays, which is no longer 682. That number is gone. It's 1187. And the Equal Rights Amendment. We really need lots and lots of quality testimony.
Thank you, Senator. Back to you, Sarah.
Thank you so much, Senator Golden. And thank you especially to Jane and Charisse for sharing your testimonies, for being vulnerable and putting yourselves out there, for feedback from Senator Golden, and for all of us to learn alongside you. So appreciate that. Now we're going to have a chance to work on this ourselves. Both what Charisse and Jane wrote and read could be used in an actual live testimony hearing, but could also be adapted to submit for testimony online. Or into an email into your legislators. And so that's what we're going to practice right now, is actually writing something that you can submit today and that we can use in support of these bills. Writing good testimony is not necessarily about being a policy expert. There's lots of those, but legislators also need to hear from everyday people across the state, like me, like you. And I want to share a 3-part process for writing good testimony that's simple and effective, and it comes from Marshall Gans, who cut his chops as an organizer with the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee during the Civil Rights Movement, and also organized for many years alongside the United Farm Workers in California. So I'm going to share my screen here, if I can. And here's kind of an overview. Hopefully you can see this. The first part is the story of self. So this is 3 parts. The first part is the story of self, and this is your why. This is where you get to share your personal experiences, your motivations, your values. It's an opportunity to demonstrate a little bit of vulnerability and authenticity, while also helping others understand what brought you to this work. So what life experiences shaped your values and led you to care about this issue? And the purpose here is to build trust, in this case with legislators, and to create a connection with others by sharing why this matters to you personally. So I want to invite all of us to choose one of the 2 bills that we introduced, either the Make Polluters Pay bill or the Climate Resilience Hubs bill, and just take a minute to think about your why. And I'm going to put a couple of prompts for that in the chat, but I'll read them aloud first. How have you and your loved ones been impacted by climate change? How are you already paying for the costs of extreme weather events, wildfires, and climate disasters? And if you're writing about the need for community resilience hubs, you might focus on a time when you experienced neighbors coming together to support neighbors during a disaster or crisis. So take a moment and start to jot down some notes. What's your personal story or lived experience that connects with one of these bills? And I'm wondering if we might get, if for those of you who are online, if you might even just take a second to paste into the chat the essence of your why, the story that you might want to share that connects to your own lived experience with one of these bills. Yes, thank you, Karen. Your personal experience with the Alameda Fire down in Southern Oregon and the need for recovery still going on. We'll take a little more time in a bit to continue working on these, but I want to move us to that second part. Once we've established a little bit our own story and of self and why we care about this, we move to a bigger we. This is the story of us. This part moves us beyond the personal and connects our story to the broader community. It's an opportunity to highlight some of the shared experiences or struggles or aspirations that unite a group. And it's making clear that these bills and issues aren't just about addressing our own personal individual problems, but are about a broader community impact. And so here we get to focus on what are the shared pressures or opportunities that bring us together and how our stories intersect. And so I wonder if maybe we could hear from even just 1 or 2 voices in the room. How does your experience reflect or relate to the experiences of other people in your community or beyond? Is anyone willing to be brave and come off, like Jane and Charisse, and come off mute for just a second and share how your personal experience relates to the broader experiences of your community and beyond?
Sarah,
I'll do
I have
that.
a
David
friend.
Wheeler here.
Go ahead, David.
Some of you know I pastored a large church in downtown Portland for a number of years. And when the weather was freezing, when the storm waters were pelting down, we had unhoused neighbors huddled in our doorways, and our facilities covered a whole square block every single night and often during the day. And more than once, one of those neighbors huddled in our doorways died from exposure. And for a congregation that had a lot of relatively prosperous middle-class folk, we could not avoid the reality of a changing climate and how it impacts all of us, but especially our less fortunate neighbors.
Yep, great. Thank you so much, David. Your own experience alongside those of your neighbors and feeling those impacts. And you might even point out that that's magnified across communities across our state, right? Can we hear from one more person who might share about the way that your personal experience connects to this bigger we?
Sarah, my friend Kara Strutz here in Baker City.
Great. Okay,
has a
Kara's
story
here.
to
Yay.
tell.
Hi, my name is Kara, and I grew up on a ranch outside of Baker City. My belief is Jewish, and to that end, I believe that we are mandated in Scripture that we are to care for our natural resources and the wildlife that God has created, not to mention our neighbors. Last summer, there was a horrific wildfire here in Oregon that burned over 294,000 acres. I learned in researching that was the largest ever on record at this time. The heat and the smoke made it absolutely impossible to cool my home via opening windows and doors at night to let cool night air in. And I was forced to purchase an air conditioner just to avoid suffering heat stroke. I believe many other of my neighbors were forced to do the same. It impacted our community tremendously. We are a rural ranching community, and the fire burned so many crops and killed so much livestock. And we're still struggling with getting back from where we were at. I for sure want to have the lawmakers simply listen to what we have endured and hold the people who pollute accountable for their actions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kara. That was really powerful. And I loved how you went from your own experience to your broader community. And then you really landed it at the end with sort of that third piece. And I'll share my screen one more time here, the story of now. And you made that direct ask, right? Inviting legislators to join our bigger we through this call to action by saying yes to funding climate resilience hubs, or yes to making oil and gas companies pay their fair share, right, for the damages caused by wildfires and other climate fueled disasters. So saying yes to our bigger we and to the change that we want to see in the world. So that's the focus of the last part, right? What is the challenge or opportunity we face right now, and the specific action that you are hoping that your legislators will take in this particular moment? So We're going to just have a few more minutes, I think, maybe 5 more minutes to work on kind of crafting your own testimony. I'll put a little music on while you're jotting down notes. Peter put a link in the chat for those of you who are online where you can go ahead and kind of fill it in right now, and we'll help make sure that those get to your legislators at the appropriate and strategic time. And for those of you who are in person, I think you have some worksheets where you can go ahead and fill out kind of your story and testimony on one of these bills. So we'll come back at 3:40 or so.
Hi
Okay, I welcome you all to come back to the space here. And if you're ready, go ahead and submit your testimony in that form online or hand your testimony into your workshop leader. And if you're like me and you just need a little more space and time to think about it, that's okay. But I invite you to find a buddy next to you who you commit to like making sure that the thing gets done. And I've included a little bit more information in the chat if you want a little bit more background around both of these bills. I'm going to pass it over to Britt to share about some additional ways that we can continue to build our power and community together to pass this legislation and work for climate justice well beyond the session. Britt?
Thank you, Sarah. As you can tell, I'm here in my car at my son's winter baseball game. Two words that should never go together, I have to say. This is a simple invitation to continue together in community beyond today, and as Sarah said, beyond this session. We really at EMO urge us all to rise up in this moment in hope, and great hope that with the power of partnership with each other and with lawmakers like Senator Golden here in Oregon, we can make big change to move us closer to justice and to create opportunity for all in our community. And at EMO, I will just say there's a few bills that we are working on that we see as core pieces to pass in this moment, frankly, in our nation's history. First is we intend to provide sanctuary and security to thousands of our immigrant neighbors this session by providing immigration and legal support to those across the state. Amazingly, 1 out of every 3 Oregonians who is undocumented in Oregon actually has a pathway to gain status, to gain documentation. And we are committed to fight to make sure that not only are those folks who find themselves in immigration court have attorney by their side, but also that we reach out to the community in a proactive, preventative effort to identify and provide status to all individuals that are eligible now under existing federal law. That's nearly 30,000 Oregonians, and we absolutely have to have the back of our neighbors in this moment. Second, we're looking at several housing policies from housing homeless youth to youth experiencing homelessness to creating more affordable housing for all of our neighbors. And we urge you to be involved. You can track those issues and more. I'll put a link in the chat and our email. You'll also start, if you signed up here, I think there's a good chance you'll start receiving some of those as they come. And join us for regular phone calls and learn how to be involved. Finally, I'll just say that what the Sacred Organizing House and EMO have lined up over the next several weeks is opportunities to stay very much involved in the legislative session, including by being in Salem or virtual on Interfaith Advocacy Day. And Sarah will talk about Advocacy Day momentarily. But Interfaith Advocacy Day is a chance to show tremendous power in the legislature. I would say that Interfaith Advocacy Day is the second most attended advocacy day every legislative session. Up to 500 individuals come every 2 years to share our values and to pressure lawmakers to make sure our budgets and our policies match those values. And this year it's going to be on Tuesday, April 29th. We'll have workshops and engagement in the morning at St. Mark Lutheran, just down the street from the Capitol. In the afternoon, chances to engage with our lawmakers and practice the skills that Senator Golden just gave us feedback on. And we're really working hard to couple that advocacy day with those of our other advocacy partners, including Sarah. So I'll pass it back to you, Sarah, to talk about kind of what I hope would be a kind of a 1-2 punch for our lawmakers when it comes to engaging in the Capitol this spring.
Sure, Britt. Yeah, thank you. Our as Britt mentioned, our Sacred Organizing Coalition is going to host an intergenerational, multiracial, multilingual advocacy day. We'll have Spanish and English there, and a people's potluck public action / press conference right in front of the state capitol on Monday, April 7th. I'd love for you all to join us there. We're working to advance a suite of legislative priorities that helps to build an Oregon where all belong. Farm workers, students, wildfire survivors, immigrants, our unhoused and unstably housed neighbors, and people on the front lines of climate change and disaster. We're going to have a track for youth and children. At least my kids don't have school that day. I know there's a couple of districts that are off school, but I also know parents who are bringing their kids and youth from across the state and taking them out of school for the day for an educational experience of a different sort. So I'm going to put into the link or put into the chat the registration link in case you're able to join us on Monday, April 7th. And also some flyers for the Sacred Organizing Coalition's Advocacy Day. Sorry, I think I missed some text in there. And we have those flyers available in both Spanish and English. Our coalition is also hosting regular legislative action briefings on Zoom throughout the duration of the session. And these are happening twice a month on Monday evenings from 5 to 6 p.m. Our next one is on Monday, March 24th. I'm going to put one more link into the chat here so that you can sign up for those action alerts and updates from our coalition and Zoom links from throughout the session. So I invite you to join us that way, both if you can make it to join us in Salem for either of these advocacy days, but also to continue taking action together and getting updates throughout the session. Britt, do we have a couple other folks who are going to join us now to talk about some other priorities and opportunities? I think maybe Jeff was going to say another word about the right to a safe and healthy environment.
Am I on?
Yes, please.
You are, Jeff.
Yes, thank you.
Fantastic. Okay, yes. So just a reminder, two of the events coming up that I mentioned earlier, I'm just going to go through one more time very quickly. One is this March 21st, EMO and Oregon Power and Light and Cafe, or the Climate Cafe. That's going to be very important. It's going to be from noon until 1 o'clock. It's free. It's something you can just watch online. Senator Golden will be one of our speakers. In fact, our leadoff speaker on that, Reverend Mark Knudsen, who many of you know, just agreed last night to join that panel. We've got a great panel, so it's going to be 1 hour of really getting a deep dive into the right to a healthy environment. The other one is the Advocacy Day, and that's on the 26th. But I wanted to mention one more thing very quickly, because when people were talking about getting up to date on bills and bill numbers and so on, there's another group that collaborates increasingly with the faith communities called the Consolidated Oregon Indivisible Network, or COIN. And I happen to be the co-chair of the Climate, Energy, and Environment team there. That's about 52, 55 indivisible groups throughout the state of Oregon. And we have a website that if you just go to COIN Oregon, COIN Oregon, you'll see all of the bills. There's about 55 bills that we're tracking in the climate, energy, and environmental field area. They were either supporting, opposing, or neutral on, and they're reasonably up to date. They update them every week. So if you want to find out what the bill numbers change or when the hearing is or whatever, this is available to anybody. A lot of groups are using this more and more and more. There's about, I'd say, 50 groups, 50 bills or so on the climate, energy, and environment side, but there's also a whole bunch of other bills that we focus on homelessness and affordable housing and healthcare, education and children, hunger, protecting democracy, gun safety, you name it. So that's a place to go up to get up to speed. You can find out how you testify, how the hearing get linked in. It's all there, and it's a one-stop shop about bills that most of us care about.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you for your partnership and your leadership. So great to be part of the coalitions you mentioned and in the partnerships you mentioned. Next, I want to just pass it to Sharice Bach to talk about Move Oregon Forward, another coalition EMO is very much proud to be a part of. Sharice, are you still there?
Yep, I'm here. Hi, everyone. Good to be with you all. And yeah, the Move Oregon Forward Coalition is a group of organizations that are working on a transportation package and paying attention to the climate and safety and justice and affordability aspects of the transportation package that the legislature is working on this year. So you can see in the chat that there is going to be a link there for the coalition website, and there are a lot of statewide groups around the state and local groups around the state that are part of that coalition. It's a really good one to pay attention to. There's going to be a lobby day in Salem on April 17th. And so I think that information for registration is coming online this week. And so if you sign up in the Join Us section of that website, or you'll be able to be informed when the registration form is available. But would be great to have people of faith joining that coalition to say why transportation matters, especially as we're trying to make sure that we reduce greenhouse gas emissions in that sector, and that ends up being a big part of the transportation package.
Thank you so much, Reese.
All
Many
those we're talking
opportunities
about
to come.
are on the COIN website, including the two that were the subject of discussion this afternoon, the Make Polluters Pay and the Climate Resilience Hub. So all of those things are up to date. Although I noticed we have to change, we still have SB 682 for the Superfund Make Polluters Pay Act. So we'll have to update that later today when I get home.
Thanks, John. Let's take a moment just to return to our bodies, return to our breath, to once again feel ourselves supported by our Mother Earth, and to draw upon that sacredness of this shared place that we call home, and to feel the power of us among. What happens when we come together? We are so much more powerful than alone. Thank you for being here, for taking time to write and share your testimony. Hope to see you in Salem at one of these many opportunities and beyond as we continue working together. Peter, pass it back to you.
Sarah, we are grateful for your facilitation, and Britt as well, of this workshop, Organizing for Statewide Success. We've done it. We've organized right here, right now. We've taken action by considering the story of self, the story of us, the story of now, and filling out our testimony, or at least drafting it. So we're ready for the next step. And thank you for taking us there, Sarah. We are now reconvening as a statewide community from our workshops, whether it was a customized workshop in your local community, or whether it was our community resilience workshop, or here on Zoom, Organizing for Statewide Success. And for at least two of those workshops, you may have seen that there was a form in hard copy at the registration table or from your workshop leader that you can complete in hard copy. And there are 3 ways listed at the top of that hard copy form that you can submit it to us. You can either take a photo with your phone and email it, or you can find the QR code by going to the phone or the photo app on your phone and go to that link or go to that QR code and fill out the form online and submit it there. That's easier for us because then we have all of your information. We can just press forward and get it straight over to legislators. And then also, for those of you who don't have either of those options, please just make sure that form gets to the registration desk or to your workshop leaders, and they'll scan them back to us. And our intention is that we would follow up with everyone who is interested in being part of a team, being part of a neighborhood network, to continue to strengthen our community climate resilience, and more specifically, to be 2 weeks ready and engage with other resources that are available to us. So thank you for considering those opportunities, and we look forward to being back in touch with you. For those who were part of the Organizing for Statewide Success workshop, or those who weren't, who would still like to engage in some advocacy so we can get the best decisions possible for our statewide community, for our climate safety, health, and resilience. Please take advantage of the opportunity to fill out that form so we can continue to work with you, get you plugged into the next advocacy days opportunities. Lots to do, lots to follow up on, and yet I so appreciate that Sarah helped us to get grounded and to take that second breath, because that's where we began and that's where we will finish today, because we are here to be truth seekers and truth speakers, and to act together, to build power together with love, rather than power over or through division. There's so much that we can do together, and we return to that grounding, we return to that sense of truth and love as we close out with our closing blessings. So I'd like to, at this time, invite Imam Al-Ubaid to join us from the Muslim Educational Trust, or MET, in Tigard. And MET's mission, as you may know, is to empower the future, and it's reflected in MET's commitment to education, civic engagement, and community building by addressing the social determinants of health and championing equity. MET creates opportunities that uplift individuals and strengthen the larger community, including this one. So, Sheikh Al-Ubaid, we are so grateful for your time and for your closing blessing.
Assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon you. Just I would like to share with you this time a few verses from the Quran that's supporting saving the environment. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, قال موسى لقومه استعينوا بالله واصبروا إن الأرض لله يورثها من يشاء من عباده والعاقبة للمتقين. So said Moses to his people, seek help through Allah and be patient indeed. The earth belongs to Allah. He causes the inherit it to whom he wants. And other verse in Surah Al-Baqarah, that وَإِذَا تَوَلَّى سَعَى فِي الْأَرْضِ لِيُفْسِدَ فِيهَا وَيُهْلِكَ الْحَرْثَ وَنَصْرُ اللَّهِ وَلَا يُحِبُّ الْفَسَادَ. And when mankind goes away and strives throughout the land to cause corruption therein and destroy crops and animals, Allah does not like the corruption in the land. In Surah Al-Rum also, chapter Al-Rum said, ظهر الفساد في البر والبحر بما كسبت أيدي الناس ليذيقهم بعض الذي عملوا لعلهم يرجعون. So corruption has appeared throughout the land and ocean by the reasons of what hands of people have earned. So may let them test part of consequences so that they may return back and do the right things and justice. And in Surah Al-Ma'idah, also chapter Al-Ma'idah, it said, كلما أوقدوا نارا للحرب أطفأها الله ويسعون في الأرض فسادا والله لا يحب المفسدين. So Allah said in Surah Al-Ma'idah, every time they kindle the fire of war against you, Allah extinguish it. And Allah does not like corruptors. And also in Surah Al-A'raf, chapter Al-A'raf, it said, يا بني آدم خذوا زينتكم عند كل مسجد وكلوا واشربوا ولا تسرفوا إنه لا يحب المسرفين. He said, O children of Adam, take your adornment at every mosque or every place of worship. Eat and drink, but do not excessive. Indeed, he likes not those who commit excess. And also in other verse of chapter Al-Baqarah, it said, مثل الذين ينفقون أموالهم في سبيل الله كمثل حبة أنبتت 7 سنابل في كل سنبلة 100 حبة والله يضاعف من يشاء والله واسع عليم. And the example of those who spend their wealth in the way of Allah and do justice is like a seed of a grain, which grows in 7 spikes. In each spike, 100 grains. And Allah multiplies, He rewards for whom He wills. And also in Surah Yusuf, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَكَذَلِكَ مَكَّنَّا لِيُوسُفَ فِي الْأَرْضِ يَتَبَوَّأُ مِنْهَا حَيْثُ يَشَاءُ نُصِيبُ بِرَحْمَتِنَا مَن نَّشَاءُ وَلَا نُضِيعُ أَجْرَ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. So, and thus we established the power for Joseph in the land to settle therein justice and mercy and whatever is good for the environment. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala touch with the mercy for whom He will. And lastly, the last verse that I would like to share with you, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, الذين إن مكناهم في الأرض أقاموا الصلاة وآتوا الزكاة وأمروا بالمعروف ونهوا عن المنكر ولله عاقبة الأمور. It said that, and they are those who, if give them the authority and power in the land, establish prayer and give zakah or charity for helping people, and they do justice and enjoin that is right and forbid whatever is wrong, and Allah belongs to the outcome of those they are doing the right things. So may Allah bless you and bless your organization and give you always the support from Him. Thank you, and Assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon you.
Sheikh Mohammed Al-Bayed, it's an honor to hear your recitation of the Holy Quran. Thank you for teaching us, and thank you for your presence today, everyone who is part of the MET community. Now, I have the honor of introducing Reverend Alan Miles in Medford, who is going to provide a closing benediction.
Thank you, Peter. Yes, it is a benediction, and it's a blessing at the end of services at the Episcopal Church that I attended back in the day, and it made a difference in my life. It gave me chills up and down my spine the first time I heard it, and I'm a different person because of it. It goes like this. Life is short, and we have little time to gladden the hearts of those who travel the way with us. So be swift to love, make haste to be kind, and may the divine mystery, who is beyond our ability to understand, but who made us and loves us and travels with us, bless us and keep us this day and forevermore.
Amen. May it be so. Thank you, Reverend Miles, and thank you all. Safe travels. We look forward to seeing you again very soon. And thank you so much for spending this time with us today.
Thank you, Peter, and everybody else. Have a lovely week.